What's up, ladies? Welcome back to my channel. So I know it's been a while since I posted a video, you guys, but I have just really been going through burnout. Like, I'm just going to keep it all the way 100 with you guys. So I don't know. I'm going to try to film some more content and post the content that I do have, because I do actually have a lot of videos. So I don't know, everybody goes through it. So I've just been kind of taking like a mental break, and I went on vacation. But I'm back now, so I'll be uploading slowly but surely. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. I am still doing my nail giveaway. We are super close to the goal, 500 subscribers, and I'm going to be dropping that giveaway. So anyways, without further ado, we're going to get into this tutorial. As you can tell, I'm just doing a simple ombre glitter white set, nothing major at all. If you're wondering why her nails look so nice and fresh, it's because we just did a soak off. So she is one of my clients that actually cares about her nails and really listens. Anytime she gets a new set, she soaks them off, which I love. I recommend that all the time. And also on her thumb, that red stain is just from some polish that got on her finger when she was soaking her fingers in acetone. So anyways, I went ahead and pushed back the cuticles, and I went around the cuticle area with my cone drill bit, and that just pushed back all of the excess skin and exposed the entire nail. So then I used my 180 sanding band and just briefly covered the entire natural nail, and that just eliminates the natural oils. And that's important, guys, because if you leave any natural oils on the nails, it will cause lifting and your nails will be popping off. So just make sure that you are just briefly running them across the entire natural nail and eliminating all of that natural oils, all of those natural oils, the natural shine, all of that. So I went ahead and applied the nail tips and cut them down to her desired length. She was doing like a short, medium-ish type of vibe, but yeah. So she's going to keep them square. She was loving the square shape that she had with her last set. So this shaping here will be pretty easy for the most part. You're just going to file the sides at a 90-degree angle, and then of course file the free edge, which is the part I'm filing right now, at a 90-degree angle. You guys know that I always tell you to make sure that you're flipping your client's hand, looking at it from different angles. That way you can make sure it's even, the nails are even, from all points of view, rather than just the typical point of view you look at the nails in when you're doing them. And I did not film this part, but I did clip the cuticles. I know some techs don't do that, some techs do. I do it because I feel like it just really adds to the quality of the set, and it just looks way better. I used to not do it, and it just, I don't know, it's just something about it that I just hated. So I started doing it. My nail quality improved, and the look just looked better overall. So I don't ever film that part. I just like to throw it in there in case anybody's wondering, like, I wonder, does she clip the cuticles? Yes, I do, but that's another story for another time. So I'm just going back in and kind of making sure that all of the nails are the same length. And if you're wondering, for the file, I use an 80 grit file, which is the sharpest file that you can use. You don't have to use this file, but I like to use it because I feel like it helps with my shape and getting it nice and crisp and clean. So now I'm going to go back over with that same sanding band, and what I'm doing here is blending in the nail tip with the natural nail. And this is super important because it helps prevent lifting and helps with the retention, which is the nail staying on. You do not have to apply too much pressure. You actually don't want to apply, like, you want to make sure that you're not applying too much pressure because it will burn your client's finger, and that's due to friction. So you just want to briefly run over just where the tip meets the natural nail. And I also go over the entire nail tip just because I feel like it helps with the adhesion of the acrylic. That's totally optional, but I recommend it. So now I'm going in with my Mia Secret dehydrator. This just gives it one more little layer of making sure that those natural oils are off of the nail. So now I'm going in with my Young Nails Protein Bond, and this is just primer. This is what helps get the nails ready for the acrylic application. It helps prevent lifting and helps the acrylic really adhere to the nail. So like I mentioned, I'm just going to be doing like a basic, really classy set, I guess you can say, nothing major. So this finger is just going to be an all white finger, more so like a milky white finger. If you've worked with white before, you know that it's actually one of the harder colors to work with, regardless of what brand you use. So when I use my white acrylics, I like to kind of like work with smaller beads rather than larger beads, because it just gives me more time and more room to fix a mistake or a bead that is like starting to go rogue. So I recommend that. You don't have to, but I feel like it just makes the application process way easier and way smoother. You know that I always tell you and recommend wiping the sides of the nails constantly to keep your shape, as well as wiping the free edge of the nail to keep that nice straight edge. It just eliminates a lot of shaping and filing and whatnot towards the end of the set. So I always recommend that. And then overall, it just, helps keep everything a lot cleaner, a lot neater. As you can see, I'm just slowly working my way up from the bottom of the nail to the cuticle area, and I'm just lightly applying each bead, and I'm feathering it down, not applying too much pressure. That just causes the acrylic to mush into the brush and or wipe off. So you just want to make sure that you're lightly patting it, feathering it down. And the most important part here in the application process is the apex. You want to make sure that you're focusing on the apex, which is the part where the nail tip was applied to the natural nail. And that's important because you can kind of think of it as like a flower and a root. If the root is not properly taken care of, then the flower will not grow. So in this situation, if the apex is not built up, then the nail is not going to have a good foundation. And the reason why that is where most of the focus should be when it comes to foundation is because 9 times out of 10, if a nail is going to break, that's where it's going to break. That's the only reason that nail is on the natural nail, is because of where you glued it down onto the natural nail. I know that kind of sounds confusing, but basically, if you would have never glued that tip down to the natural nail, there would not be any, nail extension here. So that's like the part that we have to protect most, because like I've said, 9 times out of 10, if the nail is going to break, that's where it's going to break at, because that's like the heart of the nail. So that's my little TED talk on that. I mention that in every video just because a lot of people think that as long as the whole entire nail is super thick and fat, that the nail won't break, but that's not necessarily true. You can have the cuticle area of your nail super thick. You can have the free edge of your nail super thick, but if the apex is not built up how it should be, then your set of nails is not where it needs to be. So I just like to always tell you guys that, just in case you don't know that, or forget, whatever. So as you can see with the pinky nail, I think I used about 3 or 4 beads. And I always recommend that just because you start off, it's easier to add acrylic rather than take acrylic off. So I always just like to say to work with the basic 3 or 4 beads, working your way up. And if you need to add more, definitely add more. It's not like if you use more than 3 or 4 beads that you're not doing your set of nails right. That's not true at all. It's just, it's easier to work with less beads. Well, it's easier to work with less acrylic rather than too much, because like I mentioned, you're going to be spending a whole bunch of time trying to file all of that excess acrylic off rather than just go in and add another bead or 2. So this here is my 3rd bead, and as you can see, I'm only probably going to have to place 1 more right near the cuticle. And speaking of cuticle beads, you do not want to place the acrylic right on the cuticle. And I know that kind of sounds like backwards, but the reason that you don't do that is because when you place any bead, not just a cuticle bead, but any acrylic bead in general, when you go to pat it and feather it down, it does push up a little bit. And so by placing this right underneath the cuticle, when you go to pat it down, it'll push up exactly right where it needs to go. And sometimes it might even flood, and that's when you will see, that's when you'll do what you see I'm constantly doing, is wiping around the cuticle area with my brush, keeping it clean. Now, wiping the cuticle area, as you can see I'm doing right now, and not applying the bead right over top of the cuticle is important because it helps prevent lifting. You're 100% going to get lifting if you have acrylic leak over onto the cuticle. And that's because when the natural nail grows out, that acrylic will not be adhered to the nail. It'll be risen, from where it was left on the cuticle. Obviously, the cuticle can't grow with the acrylic. The acrylic grows with the natural nail. So you just want to make sure that you're keeping that area super clean. You're not applying that bead too close to the cuticle, or else you will have flooding, and flooding will cause lifting. So that's just something to think about. As you can see, I only used 4 beads there. And yeah, you can wipe around the nail as much as you need to. Even if I know for a fact there's no acrylic on the skin, I still do it just to be safe, because it's easier to work with the acrylic while it's wet, and you can just, clean it up and wipe it off rather than it be dry. And now you're having to pull the client's skin back in all different types of ways, and file here, file there, cut this. It's just too much, rather than, just simply wiping it off with your brush and going on about your set. So another thing I want to mention also, as you can see, I'm constantly wiping my brush on my towel, and that is because it is so easy for acrylic to get clogged in your brush, especially if you're not cleaning it, especially if you're using a color like white, or if the acrylic is pretty thick in consistency. There's so many different things that could cause that. So I always recommend, every time you place a bead, every couple pats, whatever works for you, you want to make sure you are cleaning your brush on the towel. That's so important. It is so easy to get your brush clogged, but it's so hard to get it unclogged. There's a whole process of that, which I'll probably do a video on, actually, because I don't have anything up that shows how to repair a acrylic brush, but I do know how to do that. So I think I will make that a video for you guys. If you want to see it, comment down below. But yeah, rather than wait for that video to get uploaded, you can just wipe your brush and keep it clean as you go. So another thing, I don't think I've ever mentioned this, but if you guys are wanting to know what brush I'm using, I got it from Sugar and Cream. It's an Instagram nail supply store. I love it so much. I don't think I'll ever use another brush until I get my own nail supply store up and running. It is the best brush. It is pretty costly, but it's definitely worth it. I think I've had this brush for going on 2 years, and some people like to replace their brush, I should say, after like a year or two, whatever. This is doing its job, and it's doing it well, so I don't really feel like I need to get another brush, but that's another story for another time. Right now I'm doing an ombre nail, so I'm going back in with that same white, and I like to just apply typically 2 beads. I don't like to take the acrylic up too much, but you want to take it up enough to where when you apply the second color, that it actually can blend. I know some people like to do like half and half, and I feel like that makes it very obvious, like where the ombre starts, and I just hate that look. So I like to place my first bead at the edge of the nail, and then my second bead right above that one, and kind of push it up. I like to kind of make that bead a little wetter, only because it kind of lets that acrylic look more flush, so that way when we mix the other color, like I said, it'll actually ombre, rather than leave it with a straight cut. Then when we blend the other color, it'll be pretty obvious where the blend is actually happening. I went back to the pinky nail, and I added a little bit more acrylic to a spot that I had noticed was looking kind of dull, which, like I said, you can add as many beads as you want. I just recommend adding them as you go rather than from jump, because it's easier to add more acrylic than take acrylic off. So usually I like to let my ombre fingers, like the first color, I like to let the acrylic dry just a little bit. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like the colors blend way better when you give the first one like a little time to just set in. It could just be me, but it works for me, so that's what I like to recommend. So I went ahead and came over to the thumb. This is just going to be another plain white milky nail. So I'm just doing the same thing that I did on the other fingers, which is work my way up from the free edge to the cuticle area, applying the bead, making sure I'm wiping the sides of the nails, the free edge of the nail, keeping it nice and clean. And another thing that I do when applying my acrylic is I kind of like to hold the bead just for literally a second or two and kind of just help it set. If you feel like your acrylic is like too runny or the bead that you picked up was too wet, definitely just hold your brush on the bead for a second or two, and it will kind of help soak that up and dry it out just a little bit. That's something that I learned when I was a beginner and I was working with a lot of cheap acrylic. It helped me a lot. Sometimes it's just runny and you just got to work with it, but most of the time, 9 times out of 10, just holding that bead for a little bit will definitely help. And as you can see, this was a great example, a great point of view of seeing where to place that cuticle bead. So I did not place it right on the cuticle, I placed it right below, and as you can see, I had to wipe just a little bit, but that was just more so for precaution. But I feathered it down and I went right up to where I needed to be. It's super flush, super neat, so that's why I recommend that. So I'm going to go back in. She's just doing a basic ombre. The color that I'm using here is Young Nails Cover Rosebud, I believe. And for the rest of the colors, they're from Sugar and Cream. I think the glitter is called like Firecracker, and the white is called like Snowberry or something like that. But they're from Sugar and Cream. Love their acrylics. 1,000 out of 10. I would use every single one of them. If I could, I would buy every single acrylic that they ever come out with. It's just the best acrylic I've ever worked with. And Young Nails is actually pretty good too. I haven't worked with a lot of their acrylics, only 2, but the 2 that I've worked with have been really good. So another thing is when you're doing the ombres, you want to kind of do a little more pressure than just feathering. You do want to kind of pat it down, only because you want to get that blending going, but not too much, of course. But you just want to kind of work with a drier bead, not a dry bead, but a drier bead. That way it doesn't just completely run down over the white, run off the nail. Just feather it down. I only had to apply 2 beads there, and I think I ended up going back in and added just a little bit more to this pinky. I don't know what it was that I was seeing, but I just wanted to add a little bit more. I just felt like it needed it, so there's that. You can always do that. The set still turned out bomb, so that just shows you that if you ever feel like you need to add more acrylic, just do it. Don't make it seem like, oh, I must not be doing the nails right, whatever. No, you're being safe than sorry. So this is how they came out with after the application. As you can see, super, super neat, super clean. I could apply a top coat and let her just leave. But of course, I'm not going to do that. But that just shows you guys it's easier, and it's way better and way more convenient when you work cleaner rather than try to clean everything up at the end. And so now I'm going back in with that same 80 grit file, and I'm filing the sides of the nails at an 80-degree angle and filing the free edge at an 80-degree angle. But this time I am adding in filing underneath the sides of the nails, and that's important because with all of the filing, all of the acrylic application, everything that we've done between applying the nail tips and filing them and then now, you just never know what could have maybe got underneath of there, what if the file could have kind of made the nail tip a little rugged, whatever the case facing B. So you just want to go back in and make sure that you're getting underneath the side walls of the nail, making it nice and straight and clean. You don't really have to do too much. I just like to kind of start underneath of one side and just kind of file it up just a little bit and do the same with the other. When you're doing this, you do want to make sure that you're pulling back your client's skin though, because this file is pretty sharp, like I mentioned. So you want to make sure that you don't cut your client. It will not take much besides a simple swipe to take off some meat. So I have done that to myself many times, and it's the worst feeling ever. It takes like a week or two to heal. It just is disgusting and it hurts so bad. So you want to make sure that you are protecting their skin and, just being careful. So again, even though the acrylic is already applied, I still say flip the client's hand, look at it from different angles. As you can see, they're nice and even, nice and straight. And that's why I like to look at it from different angles to make sure of that, because just looking at it from this point of view, it may look straight, but then once you turn it to look at it from another point of view, it's not. So you want to make sure that you're giving your clients the best quality nails, even, nice, clean, in all points of view, and not just one. So again, with the free edge, you want to make sure you're filing at a 90-degree angle, straight up and down. Now I'm going in with my ceramic drill bit. I think this is extra coarse. Maybe it might just be coarse, I'm not sure. But I'm just starting around the cuticle area, going from one side to the other, and I'm just really sealing that acrylic, and that's important because it helps prevent lifting. And then of course you still have to file over the entire nail from top to bottom, left to right, just making sure that it's super smooth, super neat and clean. And you don't have to really apply too much pressure, especially if your application was super neat, super clean. As you can see, I'm just kind of like flying through these because the acrylic was applied very neatly, so there's not much that I really have to clean up or change. So that's a plus. I told you guys it does save a lot of time to work, clean and neatly during the application process. So yeah, you want to make sure that you're sealing the cuticles and getting the acrylic right, nice and flat, nice and down where it needs to be. You do want to be super careful when using these drill bits because you do not want to cut your client. They do have safety drill bits that you can get. I like to work with the one that I'm using here, but I am experienced, so even though I'm experienced, I can still cut someone. So if you're not experienced, you definitely should just start with the safety drill bits, which you can find on Amazon. And one thing I also want to add in is, as you can see, I'm taking the drill bit on each finger and I'm like going in the curve of the nail, and that's just to make sure that it's nice and clean under there, from constantly patting the brush up against it. And then here I'm just taking a buffer, buffing the nails completely, making it nice and smooth and clean for this, which is just some top coat and some rhinestones that we decided to add. So yeah, this is the finished result. They're super cute and super clean. I hope you enjoyed this video, and like I said, I was gone for a while, but I have a lot of content that I'm going to try to upload for you guys. So stay tuned. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe.